What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the Pika Pika Papa, and I have had this video circled on the calendar for a while. I've been so incredibly excited to pull the data for this and do this content because, the market as a whole has been softening just a little bit. And in today's video, we're going to look at how the Sword and Shield top 20 singles cards and booster boxes have performed month over month, right? But we're not just going to look at from October to November because of all the work we've been doing for the last couple years here. We're going to look at how those cards and how those booster boxes have performed since September of 2023. And I truly believe this. I think that in times when the market is softening just a little bit, the work that we have done over the last couple years really starts to shine. This is when it can be the most impactful because as you're going to see through a series of charts and graphs, and you're going to see we've been through this multiple times in the past. This is nothing new. All markets go through this. There's ups and downs and all kinds of different patterns that happen along the way. But I'll also show you how periods like this can lead to some of the very best buying opportunities that we've seen over the last couple years. And if you and I and all the other Pokemon collecting maniacs out there can use our data-driven approach to identify these awesome times to jump into the market, we can pick up some incredible cards with some big upside opportunities. So before I get into that, I got to do my plug a little bit early because we're going to talk about a lot of work that we've done over the last couple years. And if you find this interesting, if it helps you at all, if you're into this type of stuff, hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. Those two small things go a long way in helping my small channel out. And it is the best way to say thank you for all the work that we have done. So in order to talk about this month, we have to talk about last month because that really kind of set up, that framed everything up for where we are today. So if you look right in front of you right now, you can see, as I said earlier, all of the top 20 singles cards and how they have performed as an aggregate from September 2023 till now, as well as the booster box aggregate. Now, what do I mean by that? So I take all of the sets in the Sword and Shield era that had a booster box, so no specialty sets, just the regular sets. I aggregate the value of the top 20 cards from each of those sets. So 12 sets, top 20 cards, 240 total cards. So I aggregate that value and I put it here in this chart, and I've been doing it since September of 2023. And I do the same thing for the booster boxes, right? So if in September of 2023 you were to buy one of every booster box from the Sword and Shield era, it would have cost you $2,058. If we were to do the same exercise last month in October, it would have cost you $8,268. Now, I do this same exercise for the Scarlet and Violet era, except for Scarlet and Violet, I include specialty sets. I do it for the Sun and Moon era, and I do it for the XY era, and we do content around all of that. But we've really been focusing on here as of late is Sword and Shield and the Sun and Moon, or excuse me, and Scarlet and Violet. I'm going to do a Scarlet and Violet video coming up soon. But what you can see right here is that the price movements have been very chunky in the past. And by that, I mean, you see I have it kind of outlined in a yellow border there. When the market has been turning down, it has turned down for periods of 4 to 5 months at a time. Those have represented some really awesome buying opportunities, obviously. And you can see in the green, again, on the left, where the top 20 prices column is, when the market has been favorable, it has been favorable in big chunk gains too. So you might be wondering, hey, listen, if you follow this graph, if you look at it right here, September and October were green, right? So what was going to happen? Was it going to follow the same pattern where we have seen in the past where it follows a very chunky type pattern? Well, what we did here was we took a step back and we went a little bit further this time, because if you look right here, September and October were big gains in terms of the top 20 singles cards. You can see from August to September, the value of those top 20 singles cards in the Sword and Shield era were up 22.64%. It's the bottom orange box I have down there on the graph. Then you can see in October, another big gain, up 10.32% from September to October. So from September to August was big, October to September was big. So a lot of big positive momentum in that top 20 singles card space. And if you look at the two other orange boxes that I have there, you can see there were two other periods where we saw some very similar, like chunk type gains over a course of 2 months, going back to May and June of 2024, where you saw from April to May, the top 20 singles cards were up over 35%. And then from May to June, it was up 11%, right? Then if you look in January and February of 2025, like that was when things were getting really frothy in the Scarlet and Violet and the Sword and Shield era. Again, you saw 2 big months in a row. But if you look at the months after that, you can see that after these 2 big chunk gains in May and June of 2024, the market started to turn negative, right? It started to give back some of those big gains. And then if you look in January and February of 2025, in March, it didn't go negative, but it started to soften. And then in April, it started to soften again. It actually started to turn negative for a period of 5 months. So last month, when we were looking at this data set, when we were talking about what is going on, we're saying, listen, normally there's a little bit of a ramp up period. Normally cards will start to turn positive. The market will start to heat up for a couple months. And then we see these big chunk gains. However, this time, we have seen them right out of the gate. We went from July to August, where it was directionally flat, but the top 20 singles cards were down 0.09%, to September, which is a huge jump to plus 22% month over month. So we said, hey, what is going to happen? Now, the results for this month are really cool, but what is fascinating to me is not just what we see in the singles cards, because we were kind of able to call that. We had a feeling this is what was going to happen. Again, the internet's forever. You can watch what we talked about, in last month's video. But what was interesting to me is what happened in the booster box space. So if you look right here, of course, the singles cards turn negative. We all kind of knew that. If you're watching this video right now, you understood that the market's getting a little bit soft. So the top 20 singles cards were down. But if you look at the booster boxes, like, we don't see the aggregate value of booster boxes come down very often. Yet in the Sword and Shield space, they got a little too hot for a long period of time, and we actually saw some booster boxes come down month over month. So for me, that is really interesting. That's fascinating to me. As you can see, it does move chunky as well in the booster box space, but nothing like in the top 20 singles cards. So again, that aggregate value, those top 240 cards from the Sword and Shield era, from October to November, did drop 3.32%. Now, the question is, what's going to happen next? As we've seen this very defined pattern happen in the past, as you can see, September, October, and November kind of breaks the pattern, not in terms of what is happening, but in terms of length. And I'm going to show you a graph here, because I think the graph is the best way to kind of visually represent and understand what has been happening. So if you look at it right here, and I put these bright blue lines underneath to kind of represent these periods of support. Now, when you look at this, it just goes to show you how the market has irrational spikes and crazy drops after it, because on the bottom graph right there, that is a visual representation of those top 20 singles card prices from September 2023 till now. My takeaway, and this was interesting, I didn't even realize this until I went ahead and put those light blue bars going left to right there on the graph, but if you look at them right here, the period of support or the period of flatness, whatever you want to call it, I call it the buying opportunity. On this channel, you know that I'm always trying to highlight cards that are hitting their support lines. I do a follow-up video to this one where I talk about Sword and Shield singles cards that, based on whatever the market is doing, I think might represent some interesting buying opportunities. And I am looking for support lines, which is essentially when a price is flat over a period of time, not going up, not going down, but when the price starts to flatten out, that tells you that the market feels like that price point, what it is right there, is very safe, right? They're not willing to pay over it, but also if the price starts to drop back down a little bit, people snap it up, which is what keeps that price kind of at that equilibrium over a period of time. My takeaway from this graph down below, and what I think is really cool, is those light blue bars that I put in there. They seem to be getting shorter and shorter and shorter. If you look from the end of 2023 towards the beginning of 2024, that light blue bar is pretty elongated, okay? So you had 4 or 5 months where the prices might have been coming up or coming down or whatever, but it wasn't really changing a whole lot in terms of the overall delta, right? It was just changing a couple percentage points here or there. So you had a lot of time to get these cards before that spike that we saw in May and June of 2024. Then the next period of support, which you can see August, September, October, November, 2024. Good period of support, but it was a little bit shorter, right? And then we went into this period of growth where these top 20 singles cards are coming up. And then, as you can see, it worked its way back down. But this time, that period of support seems to be much shorter. We didn't have as much time to pull the trigger. And you can see that it spiked up really hard, as we saw over the last couple months. That's why you see that line really aggressively go up there. And then you can see it's come down from 1 month to this month. And you can see, so it's starting to work its way back down there. The question that I have, and I don't have an answer for this, because again, I understand that 26 months of data seems like a lot, but it's really not. We need a whole lot more than that in order to really dial in on here. And again, the market is ultimately going to be dependent upon the supply and demand ratio, which we don't know what's going to happen with the Pokemon Company International. And again, just because patterns have happened like this in the past doesn't mean they'll repeat themselves in the future. I don't have a crystal ball. But what's interesting to me is, what is going to happen? Are we going to see a shortened period of decline and then hit a little bit of a period of support? Or has the prices gotten so high that we're going to see these cards slowly start to come down? down maybe 1%, 2%, 3% month over month, and then it's going to hit a support line. Like, it is going to be really, really cool to keep an eye on this. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with you. I'm going to keep these videos updated. I'm going to keep talking about the overall trends in here because I think we might be able to find another really cool support line which could represent an interesting buying opportunity for some of these cards. Now, at the very top, that's the booster box graph. Very different story with booster box. Again, as you can see comparatively to the graph below, while top 20 singles cards, they spike up, they come down, they kind of have their own little pattern to it. The booster boxes are just steady eddy upward and to the right. And that is why the ultimate investment here in the Pokemon space is booster boxes. As we all know, it is an ever decreasing population. People are always ripping booster boxes. When booster boxes are ripped, more top 20 singles cards end up out in there in the population, right? So while booster boxes are decreasing, top 20 singles cards from a population perspective is increasing. Doesn't mean top 20 cards can't give you a great return, but booster boxes, as you can see, are just absolutely slaying it out there. Now, talking about top 20 singles cards, from the first page that we saw, we understand that from September 2023 until November of 2025, the top 20 singles cards, those 240 cards, are up about 118%. And I keep the chase card data behind the scenes too. I haven't done a lot of content on it and I haven't shown it to you, but today I'm going to do it for the first time. So this is the top cards of those top 20 singles cards, right? So these are the chase cards from Battle Styles forward in the Sword and Shield era, because I think that that is a really cool indicator of how the market moves too. Now, I have this blue line on the far right, which goes and shows you how those aggregate value of these 8 chase cards have performed month over month. Now, remember, the top 20 cards over the period of time is up about 118%. The chase cards, as one would expect, have outperformed the aggregate group and is up almost 200% since September of 2023, which I thought was really, really cool. The other thing that I called out too is you see that these cards went through a couple months where they just absolutely exploded in value, and I thought it was really cool to call out. So the purple boxes, those represent the big chase cards, right? So you got the Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, you got the Gengar from Fusion Strike, you got the Giratina from Lost Origin, and in those purple boxes, what you see is these huge gains, right? When you look at April to May of 2024, I mean, the Moonbreon went from $667 to $933. That Gengar, now the big number I want you to take away from this is that Gengar went from $239 up to $403. So a big spike up from that like mid $200 range all the way up to $400. Same thing with that Giratina, right? The Giratina went from $289 all the way up to $459. Now, again, we're talking about iconic cards from an iconic era from some of the very best sets. So they are going to outperform. But what I thought was cool is if you look at the blue boxes, we're talking about some really neat chase cards from some sets that may not be the number 1, number 2, number 3 set in the entire generation, but certainly are very strong sets. And when you look at, say, the Blaziken from Chilling Reign in that same month where we saw those big gains that we just talked about, it went from just shy of $200 at $197, jumped all the way up to $333 month over month. Take a look at the Machamp from Astral Radiance. It was sub $100. It was sitting at $97, jumped all the way up to $147. Now lift your eyes to the top of the page, right? You see the Brilliant Stars Charizard, right? When we're talking about August to September of 2025, went from a $217 card, again, low $200 range, popped all the way up to $275. The Tyranitar from Battle Styles from $192 all the way up to $281. And for me, like, there's some commonalities that are happening here, like these awesome chase cards from these top tier sets. Like, they have these periods where they just jump up above. It seems like when they get near the $200 range, or if comparatively to their other chase card peers, they're a little bit undervalued. When the market goes through these periods of spikes, it seems like these cards that have maybe been underlooked or underloved compared to some of their peers, they have this catch-up period, which I think is very insightful. It's very impactful information for us to grab a hold of, because when we look at the Scarlet and Violet generation, I think there's going to be some very, very cool chase cards from some of the top sets out there that will probably lag some of their peers in terms of pricing. It might take a long time for these explosive moments to happen, for them to have these catch-up periods, if you will. But in the back of my mind, I'm saying, hey, listen, what are some of these cards that are in that $70, $80, low $100 range that I think in the long run, again, Sword and Shield is multiple years older than Scarlet and Violet, but could have these type of explosive growth moments, because the Scarlet and Violet generation, I think, is going to do just fine. I think it's a little bit overvalued compared to where some of these Sword and Shield cards were back then, so that might kind of overall, mute the returns from a percentage standpoint a little bit. But still, I thought this was a really cool takeaway. I'll do more content on this. I haven't done done enough on the chase cards, which I really should do, but I thought this was a cool graph to share for the very first time with you guys. Now, as I told you, we look at chase cards because chase cards tend to be the leading indicator. We've been looking at 3 chase cards in particular every single month, so wanted to do our normal update. So this is it, the Lugia from Silver Tempest, the Giratina from Lost Origin, and the Gengar from Fusion Strike. This is the exact graph that we used 3 months ago. I love to just copy and paste slides. It makes my life easy, and it's easy to talk about it because I've already talked about it for 2 months in a row. But this is from 3 months ago, and this is where we started to see those support lines. This is where we started to see those patterns, right? Obviously, the Lugia was already in the period where it was jumping off, but what we talked about was, listen, it's only up 15% over the last 6 months. Yes, it was working its way back down, and yes, if you look in the short run, you see a big spike, but still, in the grand scheme of things, over the last 6 months, it was only up 15%. Then you get to the Giratina. At this point, again, this is from 3 months ago, it was down 25% over the previous 6-month high, and it was starting to flatten out. Those are the support lines that we look for. Like, those are when we see that it's kind of like, oh, I know that $530 is a lot of money for a card, but man, if we follow the patterns that we have been watching, that we have seen throughout the course of this video, that was a really cool time to get your hands on that Giratina. Same thing with the Gengar. $616 is a ton of money for a Pokemon card. Don't get me wrong, but again, it was down 14% over the last 6 months. Started to hit that flatten out period. Again, those light blue bars that go up and down, those represent sales volume. So the thing that I like to see is when it hits a period of support and you start to see the sales volume going up. That tells you that there's a lot of people interested in these cards. People are starting to pull the trigger. The momentum's getting there. Like, we might see the cards start to come up. And then the next month, this is exactly what we saw. Again, this is nothing special. Like, all we're doing is pattern recognition here in this space. Remember, the only thing that drives the price of a Pokemon card is you and me and our decisions on how to spend our money. There is no external forces on these cards whatsoever. There's no more being printed. There might be a few more being ripped out there, but still, there's not a lot of people who are ripping a ton of them. Not enough being interjected into the population to drive these prices one way or the other. So understanding how this buying volume, these support lines, can affect the price over a course of time is very, very important. So yeah, Lugia continued its strong price raise. Giratina, again, up a very, very strong amount. And Gengar was absolutely killing it. So where are we this month, right? We know that the last 2 months have been favorable. Where are we at this month? And just as we had said, things were coming down. But to be honest with you, they're still not that bad compared to where they were. We're going to keep an eye on these. Hopefully they'll continue to fall for a little while. Hopefully they'll find a support line which is above where the previous support line is. That is my biggest takeaway too. If you look at where I did those left to right light blue bars to represent those periods of support, each one was higher than the previous one. So yes, these cards might fall a little bit. Yes, they're eventually going to find a new support line. What I hope is that that new support line is higher than the old support line. There's going to be a lot of painful moments, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and all of that. But as long as it stair steps its way up over time, we're all going to be happy as a clam, right? So you look, Giratina's down just a little bit at $594. Lugia is down to $430, and the Gengar is holding very, very steady at $751. So that is it. That is our entire breakdown of the Sword and Shield era and how it's performed, not just month over month, but really since September of 2023. I love pulling this data. I love doing these videos. I find it super insightful and very helpful for me because I'm an emotional guy. Like, I get caught up in the moment. I get caught up in the excitement. But when I use black and white data to help support my decision, to buy, hold, or, well, I don't really sell, so I can't say sell, but to buy or hold, that makes me feel better and helps me sleep at night when I'm spending money on Pokemon cards like this. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun. If you did, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. And at the end of the day, I just hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you all later. See ya. Bye.